I invite all residents of the Sioux, Algoma, and Canada to take part in this day to educate themselves.
Well, welcome back to another Stand on Guard Visits Question Period. This is our daily observation and analysis of Canada's question period from the House of Commons, Parliament Hill, Ottawa. So before we get to the member statements, and they're going on and on, when I worked in the Hill, it seemed to be like 10 or 15 minutes. Now they seem to go all the way to 2:30. But so you're not missing anything. Somebody actually commented today, can I please shut up? Well, if you don't want to hear my commentary, just watch CPAC, because there's no commentary in CPAC. But please bear with me, because I am here to bring a little bit of analysis. I hope it's witty at times. I try to be. But the point of this is to tell you what I think is going on and what you might not know is going on behind the scenes. So right now, it's Wednesday, September 27th. We're waiting to see if Justin Trudeau actually shows up in question period today. He has been absent for the last 2 days, not because he's been outside of Ottawa. In fact, on Monday, he was broadcasting from an event all about Russian disinformation, usual BS. But he refuses to go to question period, and he refuses to address this tremendous scandal that is at his feet, which is why was a Nazi Waffen-SS veteran invited to Zelensky's speech to Parliament last Friday. Why did Trudeau allow it to happen? He must take responsibility. Yes, I know this former speaker, Anthony Rota, resigned yesterday. He has taken the bullet for Trudeau. Trudeau has pushed him under the bus for this one. God only knows what's going to happen to Rota. I don't even know if he's going to be reelected, because he has got himself into a soup of trouble. However, Trudeau as the Prime Minister must take responsibility for this, but he has refused over the last 5-6 years to take responsibility for anything he should be taking responsibility for. He always distracts, detracts, projects, and blames somebody else for the problems he causes. Now, Poilievre will certainly try again today. Here, Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, will certainly try again today to get Trudeau to respond. So far, Poilievre has just demanded an apology from Trudeau. He should be demanding his resignation. What else does this man have to do? What else? I mean, good grief, a scandal after scandal, the economic catastrophe, the internet censorship, the medical assistance to suicide, everything else that is endangering this country. And now this. And now this. A slap in the face to Canadians and the veterans who fought heroically. This guy they invited, this Yaroslav Hunka, was no Canadian hero. And as a matter of fact, as we found out yesterday, Poland wants him extradited from Canada to potentially stand trial for war crimes, because the regiment he belonged to, the 14th Galicia, which was a Waffen-SS regiment composed of Ukrainians, that regiment was guilty of war crimes in Poland, including the slaughter of a Jewish Polish village. So I don't know if he's going to face prosecution. I can tell you this: the Canadian government doesn't really want to examine this issue, because we, and I say we, I say the Canadian government allowed thousands of these former Waffen-SS soldiers into Canada in the early 1950s. And they have remained here ever since. And there are, God knows how many still alive. I don't know. God knows how many should be standing or should have stood trial for war crimes. I don't know that either. But clearly, there are a substantial number. And Trudeau doesn't want to talk about Nazis or Nazism, because it reflects badly on his pal, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, who is not only a clown wandering around the world in his battle fatigues or his athletic wear, depending upon the day of the month. But Zelensky, of course, in his government is mired deep in the neo-Nazi dynamic in Ukraine because of the Azov regiment, which has a
Global
history that
Affairs,
goes
the Privy
back
Council
to
Office,
the
the
Nazi
Diplomatic
era,
Protocol
and
Office,
it
on top
loves
of the PMO,
to borrow the
had an
symbolism, the
obligation to
colors,
vet
the
any
flags
individual
of the
recognized at a
Waffen-SS
globally
and the Nazis.
significant event.
So there
All
is
of these
a
departments
lot
and
here.
offices
And
ultimately
stop
report to the
saying
Prime Minister.
that this
He
event
has
had
tried to
anything
shift all the blame
to
the
do with
former speaker,
insulting
but the Prime
Zelensky.
Minister personally invited
Shut up,
President
Polyev, about that.
Zelensky
Shut
on
up,
short
conservatives.
notice,
You
so
all
he
rose and
is
applauded this
personally
man.
responsible.
Besides,
It is the Prime
but this
Minister and he
insult
alone
is
who
to
is accountable
Canadians
for the
and the
success
Canadian
of all
veterans,
state
not
visits. He
Zelensky. And
tries to
stop
avoid
being
it,
in
but the
Zelensky's
buck
pocket
stops with
and
him.
getting on your
He
feet
must
every time he
apologize
says
to
anything,
Canadians
every
and to
time he
our
demands
allies,
another $1 billion.
and stop crippling
Stop
Canada's
applauding him.
reputation
Stop
on the
cheering
world
on this
stage.
war. Get off this rah, rah, rah. Let's have a war with Russia. Crap. This is nonsense. We need to end this war immediately and stop sending money that we can't afford to send to Ukraine when our own armed forces are being starved of resources as usual. Oh, what is wrong with this country, I ask you? What is wrong? Anyway, we're going to go to the SO31 portion. Mr. Polyev should get real soon. I'll comment as necessary, but I will shut up when the exchange is going on between the conservative leader / official opposition leader and whoever's taking the questions today. If it's the government house leader again, Karina Gould, God forbid Trudeau, he's putting a pregnant woman up there to face the questions he should be facing. That's deplorable. What else do you expect from Justin Trudeau?
Including this place.
Anyway, let's hear what's going on here.
His mighty 1130 signal out into the stars, where that big voice will forever travel.
The honourable member for London Fanshawe.
I want to congratulate my constituent Florence Douglas on her retirement and long service to Air Force veterans at the 427 wing in London. 26 years ago, Flo was hired as a temporary bar steward at the wing, but after only a few months, the directors made her a full-time manager after realizing how invaluable she was. Flo quickly became an integral part of the wing. She worked many hours beyond what she was paid for, and she was the go-to person for everything. She knew all the names of every member and their guests. She ensured that whomever walked through those doors of the wing felt welcome and valued. Flo continues to be a cherished member of the wing and continues to serve veterans in the London East community, even in her retirement. Congratulations, Flo, and thank you so much.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday night, the unspeakable happened on our shores off La Tabatière on the lower North Shore. The Silver Condor sank in the waters of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, taking 3 fishermen with her, 3 men, Dean Lavallée, Yves Jones, and Damon Etheridge. 3 men who practiced one of the most beautiful professions, but also the most dangerous, because the sea gives, but it can also take away, which it did on September 25th. 3 men, our spouses, fathers, brothers, sons, cousins, and friends. Because, you know, Mr. Speaker, coasters are just one big family with all their hearts beating together. On behalf of the people of the North Shore and the Bloc Québécois, I'd like to send a message of comfort to all coasters. We are all shipwrecked in these dark days, but we still have love. Damon, Eve, and Dean, we salute you today from down here with our gratitude and admiration. And overhead, that shining star hanging in the firmament, guiding sailors today, you make it shine even brighter.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Who speaks for Canada? Today, our nation's reputation on the world stage is clouded by the story of a tribute to a Nazi instead of support for our allies. When people think of Canada, when they open a newspaper, when they go on social media, when they hear about what happened here, that's all they know.
That's right.
And silence from a prime minister in hiding. This is his shame to bear, not ours. He failed to do even his most basic duty. He has shrunk from the occasion. He has refused to take a responsibility, and he has refused to take accountability. He laid the blame on someone else and asked others to debase themselves to clean up the mess. And worse yet, he asked his MPs to try to strike it from the parliamentary record. This prime minister has hurt our country. He's left our allies in the cold. He's humiliated Jews, Poles, veterans, and all Canadians. If he doesn't speak for Canada, it's time that Canadians had a prime minister who will.
That was good.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
I should mention here,
Today is World Tourism Day.
while I have a chance,
With breathtaking
because I don't
natural
think this is going to
landscapes
be
and outdoor
that
activities,
interesting to watch
vibrant
here.
cities and delicious food,
There was a
more Indigenous tourism
very
experiences. Canada stands out for all we
special
have to
cabinet
offer the
meeting
world as hosts.
early
West Vancouver
this
Sunshine
morning,
Coast
about
Sea to Sky
midnight,
Country is a microcosm
maybe a
of
little
what
after
Canada has
midnight.
to offer, with
There
world-class
were
skiing in Whistler,
ministers
outdoor
all
activities from
arrived
sea to sky,
at the
UNESCO Biosphere
Langeron
Region
block
in
on
Hudson
Wellington
House
Street,
Sound,
which is
and
where
an
the Prime
extensive
Minister's
collection of
office
artists,
is.
culinary
Now,
experiences, and
presumably
nature
this
adventures on
was
the
an
Sunshine
emergency,
Coast.
urgent
Well,
cabinet
Canada
minister
In
meeting.
Canada, tourism
Why?
contributes greatly
What was
to
going
our
on?
economy
Did it have anything to do
and has
with
incredible
Trudeau
growth
being
potential.
completely stuck
But
in
it's the
this
people
Waffen-SS
who
scandal?
welcome people to
Did it
Canada
have something to do with the reports,
who
and I
are
haven't mentioned this
particularly
today,
special.
that there was cocaine
This summer, our
on the
government
Prime
launched a new
Minister's
strategy
jet that flew
to
to
boost
India
tourism
and was
so that tourism
stranded for about 2 days on
really
the
grows in Canada.
airfield, on
I
the
would
runway,
ask that everyone here in the
supposedly
House and
because of
everyone who works in
mechanical
tourism,
problems.
I'd like to
But
help
there's a former
encourage everyone
Indian
to support
ambassador
this vision.
saying the reason
Before we
he
go
came
to
to the
question period, I
office
just
that
want
they
to rule on
discovered
the point of
drugs
order
on
raised
board.
on yesterday
And this became a
by the
huge
member for Oakville
diplomatic
North Burlington
brouhaha.
concerning unparliamentary language.
And it was
In
cocaine.
her intervention, the member alleged that the member
And
for Thornhill
this
and the
report
use
has
the
been
unparliamentary language
denied
in
by
her
the Prime
characterization
Minister's
of the
office,
government House leader.
but
She
it's
also asked for
gaining
an apology to the
credence.
minister. The
And
parliamentary secretary to the government
is the
House
Prime
leader
Minister a
reiterated
cokehead?
that he had also heard the
His
term
behavior at
used in
times
disgrace
resembles
when it
one.
was unparliamentary.
His speeches are
We
becoming
ask that the member
increasingly
apologize.
unhinged as he
Let's
goes
get
on
right
and
on.
on
Do
about
that.
wanting war with
In
Russia,
reply, the
keeping the
member
war
for
going until the end of time,
Thornhill denied having
and his
said
complete sense of
what
denial. He's in
was
almost a
suggested.
psychologically defined state of
Unparliamentary
denial
language, the
where he
tone,
cannot
intentions, and
acknowledge
effects
what
of
happened
proceedings
last week.
may
He just
must be
keeps
taken into
referring to Russian
consideration. I
disinformation.
point
So
out that the
this
term
is
did
significant.
create
Will
a
it come
series
up today in
heated
question
back
period?
and
I don't
forth
know.
exchanges
Will a
between
cocaine
members.
issue
This event
come up today
is of
in
concern to
question
the
period?
chair,
Or
given the
is
risk
that
it
off the
may
limits?
create for
Will
disorder.
the opposition
Dans
party
une
see that as
décision
off
rendue
limits? We'll
in a
find out.
decision of March 2022 on the issue of unparliamentary language, the speaker said at page 3739 that saying inflammatory things is disrespectful to all members, and I would encourage members to take great care in choosing their words in order to show respect.
Friday have deeply upset all members. There has been tense and even emotional exchanges on how this situation came to pass. In this context, I would suggest to the House that it's incumbent upon all members to bolster their efforts in being respectful and courteous in their interventions. Without qualifying the words used by the member for Thornhill as being unparliamentary, they certainly do not serve to support and promote the essential civility and respect owed by one honourable member to another. I therefore encourage members to refrain from using such words again in the future. Oral questions, question oral.
Here we go.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
C'est la responsabilité.
It is the Prime Minister's personal responsibility to invite heads of state to the House of Commons. It was the Prime Minister's responsibility when President Zelensky was invited here. The government has its security agencies, diplomats, and intelligence agencies. They could and should have checked the list of all those who were present and recognized during the visit. Will the Prime Minister finally come out of hiding and take personal responsibility for the embarrassment and monumental shame caused on the global stage by him? The Right Honorable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all those in this House, I would like to apologize sincerely for what happened on Friday and for the situation that President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation were placed in. For all those who were present, the fact that we paid tribute to that individual without knowing who he was a terrible error and a violation of the memory of those who cruelly suffered at the hands of the Nazi regime.
Position.
Mr. Speaker, it was the personal responsibility of the Prime Minister to invite President Zelensky to the floor of this House of Commons. It was his personal responsibility to make sure it was a diplomatic success. It was his personal responsibility to continue to lead the government that has the security, intelligence, and diplomatic agencies that could have and should have vetted all individuals who were present and recognized. Yet this Prime Minister allowed for a monumental, unprecedented, and global shame to unfold in this chamber. Will he take personal responsibility for this shame and personally apologize on behalf of himself?
Right. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all of us in this House, I would like to present unreserved apologies for what took place on Friday and to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation for the position they were put in. For all of us who were present to have unknowingly recognized this individual was a terrible mistake and a violation of the memory of those who suffered grievously at the hands of the Nazi regime.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Did the Prime Minister's national security, intelligence, or diplomatic officials vet the names of the people that the Prime Minister allowed within mere feet of President Zelensky?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the privilege and responsibilities and rights of parliamentarians are sacrosanct, and that the Leader of the Opposition would be suggesting that any visitor to this House should be vetted by the government of the day is actually a grievous attack on the rights and privileges of parliamentarians. However, if the Leader of the Opposition or the Speaker or anyone wants our intelligence agencies to vet any of their guests, we would be more than happy to do that in respect of parliamentary rights.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
So the Prime Minister has just said that he allowed the president of a war-torn country, who is perhaps the biggest target of false propaganda and of potential assassinations, to be surrounded by hundreds of people who had not been vetted for their security background, their potential risks that they present, or in this case, the massive diplomatic disasters that they could have brought to that event. Is he really saying that he did absolutely nothing to protect the Ukrainian president from all of those many risks?
No, Polyev is on the wrong side of this. He is wrong here, completely wrong. It's not about Zelensky or Ukraine.
The Speaker issued the invitation, delivered the recognition, and has taken full responsibility. The Leader of the Opposition knows that not one parliamentarian was aware, but the truth does not matter to this Leader of the Opposition. He distorts, misleads, aims to confuse, all for partisan gain. It's all he knows how to do.
It's Polyev is sucking up to Zelensky again. Zelensky's quite comfortable with comfortable with this hunk in there.
It is the duty of the Prime Minister to protect our diplomatic reputation. It was therefore his duty to ensure that his diplomatic, intelligence, and security forces ensured there was no one who could potentially present a danger either to the reputation or to the physical safety of the people present at such a massive international event.
Right.
But today, he said he did none of those things, and instead, after he found out about it, he hid in his cottage for 3 days. Is that what it means to take responsibility for this, Prime Minister?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we all know how many years the Leader of the Opposition has served in this House, and we can surely remember all the times he has stood up to defend the honour, the rights, the privileges of parliamentarians. And yet now, in order to make partisan attacks, he is proposing that the government of the day have the ability to vet and oversee the rights of parliamentarians and indeed of the Speaker to include people in this House, to invite them into this House. I know that the Leader of the Opposition used to have more respect for Parliament than that, but he's busy making a partisan attack.
No, Polyev has bungled it, totally bungled it. He's made it into...
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Better late than never, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I'm not sure it was. I'm not sure it was even
on
late.
his decision to accept the repeated demands to apologize to Parliament and beyond. And his definition of the Leader of the official opposition is not entirely wrong either. But I would like to ask the Prime Minister if he has personally called President Zelensky to present his and our apology, and whether he has a strategy to fight the Russians' horrible misinformation campaign along with our allies.
They're all in this together.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it is extremely unfortunate to see that this mistake made here in the House on Friday is being used by the Russians.
This man lives in his own little universe.
Sharing propaganda about why Ukraine is defending itself and why the Russians chose to invade Ukraine. Here in Canada, we will continue to firmly defend Ukraine and the principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty. We have shared that solidarity with the President of Ukraine on multiple occasions over the last few days.
Oh,
The
this is
Honourable
garbage.
It is regrettable,
Comment
Mr.
time.
Speaker, because that should have been the first thing that the Prime Minister
You
did.
see what's going on here.
And
Is
yet,
that they're
from the Prime
all
Minister's answer, I
in
believe that he's saying that he
Zelensky's
did not
pocket.
call President Zelensky.
They're all making
Who
this
other
about
than the Jewish
Zelensky,
community is
when
the biggest
Zelensky
victim
would have
of
been
this
quite
error?
comfortable with
Will
this
he commit to calling
Yaroslav
President
Hunka
Zelensky? And will he
being
commit to
in the
doing
House of
something to
Commons.
fight Russian
Because
propaganda?
he deals with
and
this
that will he
kind
do
of
something
people all the
urgently
time
within
in Ukraine.
and
He
outside
supports
Canada
them.
to promote healing with the Jewish
And this is
community?
absolutely ridiculous.
The Right Honourable Prime
This
Minister.
is all about creating this false narrative that Canada
Mr.
is fighting
Speaker,
Russia
we
and that
have
we've
sent
always been
several direct
fighting Russia.
messages to the
Polyev
Ukrainian
has
people and
screwed this
President
up
Zelensky.
enormously. He doesn't seem to get
At the
any
same
of
time,
the
we will
proper
continue to
points.
stand
It's
strong
about, for
against
him, it's about
propaganda and
vetting
misinformation
visitors
stemming from
so
Russia.
they don't offend Zelensky.
Russia
And
invaded
it's
its
about
neighbor,
this
its peaceful
individual
neighbor,
offending Zelensky. When he didn't offend Zelensky, he offended
and is
Canadians.
attacking the
So
rules-based
Polyev is
international
just
order.
as much in the dark about this as
We
Trudeau
will
is.
always stand
It's
on the
really
side
quite
of the
disgusting.
international order and
There
on the
is
side of
no
Ukrainians.
opposition in this
David
House
Burnaby
to this
said-
futile
Thank you,
war
Mr.
in
Speaker.
Ukraine that is
The
going to
Prime
grind
Minister
on
said
until the
that he
Russians
was
win.
embarrassed about what
That's what's
happened
going to
in the
happen.
chambers. But it's
Ukraine
not about
cannot
him.
win this war.
It's much more
No
than
matter how
that.
many
Real
millions,
damage
hundreds
has
millions,
been
billions
done.
of dollars we sink
Real
into this
damage to the
and make
Jewish
the armaments
community,
manufacturers
real
very
damage
rich.
to the
And that's all
war
this war is
effort in
about.
Ukraine, and real damage to
And
Canada's
this war has got to
reputation.
end. We
Now,
cannot afford to keep
finally,
sending Ukraine
after
money.
3 days, the Prime Minister
And
finally
NATO
said
cannot
something.
afford to keep
But
upping
it's
the
gotta
ante
take
until we have a
action.
third world
What
war.
is he going
That's
to do
exactly
in
where this is
concrete
leading.
terms
And these people
to
are so
clean up
shallow,
this
so
mess?
stupid. They can't even get that basic point. That's the problem.
As I pointed out, this
That's
is
the
deeply
problem.
embarrassing, not just
Is
to
that
all
we're headed
parliamentarians,
towards
but
a
to
nuclear
Canada as
cataclysm
well.
that is
We
going to
stand
engulf the whole
firmly
world.
with Ukraine. We will continue to
And
stand
it's
against
completely
Russian
unnecessary.
aggression, against Russian propaganda.
Justin Trudeau is
and
such
we
an
will
airhead,
continue to ensure,
and unfortunately,
with
most
the
of the members of this
military
House
aid, with the
are too
humanitarian
stupid
aid, with the financial
historically
aid,
to
with
understand
the
what's going
diplomatic
on,
aid we are
and too
engaged with
stupid
around
to
the
know
world that
where
will
this is
continue
going,
and indeed
and that
step
NATO
up
has
its efforts to
overstepped
counter
itself
Russian
and it no
propaganda.
longer
We will
has
continue to
an,
stand with Ukraine
an objective
for
that
as long
is
as it
real,
takes, with whatever it takes.
valid,
Mr. Speaker.
or even
Honourable
safe.
member for Burnaby South.
And it's time
Il
to
a
stop.
pris 3 jours.
Listen to
It
a little
took the
more to
Prime
sing
Minister
here.
3 days to finally say something. about what happened in this house. He has said that he is embarrassed, but this isn't about him. Real damage has been done. Now we need concrete action. What will the Prime Minister do to finally clean up this mess? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, this was indeed deeply embarrassing for all parliamentarians and Canada. But we must continue to firmly stand with Ukraine. We must continue to fight Russian propaganda and its arrogance. And we must be firmly on the side of Ukraine. To date, we have invested nearly $9.5 billion
You hear that?
in humanitarian and
9.5
military
billion.
assistance, diplomatic activities, economic assistance for Ukraine, and we will continue to be there to support Ukraine with everything that it needs for as long as it needs.
Speaker, days of silence from this Prime Minister in the face of an international diplomatic crisis that has brought shame on this entire country. An actual Nazi honored in this place, and instead of taking personal responsibility, he blamed the Speaker, went into hiding, and waited 3 days even to call for his resignation. He instructed his MPs to try to wipe the parliamentary record, to forget it. The Prime Minister is there for all of the glory, and when he makes a mess, he's nowhere to be seen. And now he says no one was vetted. He owes Canadians to take personal responsibility. Will he stand up on his feet and just do it today?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the principle of independence of Parliament from the government of the day is well established, and the government is always there to work with opposition parties or with the Speaker if they have concerns or questions about any of the guests they choose to invite into this august chamber. We will continue to stand unequivocally with Ukraine, but we will also at the same time defend the rights and privileges of parliamentarians.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Speaker, the Prime Minister has never been shy to use the Nazi label against his opponents, against Canadians.
Right.
But
Very
not
true.
being able to bring himself to take responsibility for an actual Nazi is something that Canadians will not forget.
That's right.
The Prime Minister could have prevented this. He should have prevented it, and he needs to fix it. The world knows that under this Prime Minister, a Nazi was honored in this place. The question is who speaks for Canada? And if it's not this Prime Minister, isn't it time for Canadians to have one who will?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I think indeed Canadians and the world are watching very carefully what has happened this week and the terrible error that happened on Friday. But I think they're also interested in seeing who's trying to make partisan hay out of this, who's trying to look for gains
What a
out of
hypocrite.
what was obviously
Loathsome
a terrible,
hypocrite.
terrible mistake. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we learn from this and stand even stronger with Ukraine going forward, that we counter Russian propaganda. But Mr. Speaker,
The Honourable Member for Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Community is horrified that Liberals allowed a Nazi to be honored on the floor of this House and is demanding an apology from the Prime Minister. He has embarrassed Canada on the international stage, caused a diplomatic disaster, and has handed the Kremlin a propaganda win. He has brought shame on this House and deeply offended the Jewish community. Will he stand in this House today, finally take personal responsibility, do the right thing, and personally apologize on behalf of himself?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, it was incredibly upsetting that this happened. The outgoing Speaker took responsibility and resigned, as was the right thing to do. We recognize the deep pain this caused for Jewish communities and for all who were victims of Nazi atrocities and their descendants. An embarrassment for Parliament and for Canadians, and it reaffirms the need to keep promoting and investing in Holocaust education, something our government has and always will continue to support.
The Honourable Member Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Mr. Speaker, the buck stops with this Prime Minister. That is simply not good enough, not one bit. Not only did the Prime Minister bring shame on this House, on Monday he tried to bury this sort of affair with a motion to strike history from the record. Instead of learning from history, the Prime Minister wants to erase it. Conservatives said no. Again, he has brought shame on this House and deeply, deeply offended the Jewish community. They demand a personal apology. Will he stand in the House today and finally take personal responsibility and apologize to this community?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It's important to note, Mr. Speaker, that all parliamentarians agreed unanimously yesterday that the tribute to this individual was withdrawn. That's what happened yesterday, Mr. Speaker. We do not want that to stand into the future. But we also know, Mr. Speaker, that we need to continue to stand every day with the people of Ukraine as they fight against this illegal invasion by Vladimir Putin, as they stand for the rules-based order and the principles of the UN Charter that protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of us all. This government and this country will always stand unequivocally with Ukraine.
The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker,
Well, I think we can do
for
without this
3
guy.
days, these
Anyway,
local members, cabinet
you can see what's happening
ministers,
here.
and the Prime Minister have all been
And
blaming the
Trudeau
former
will not
Speaker
take
for being
personal
the
responsibility
only person responsible for what happened
for
on
this
Friday, the
visit.
fact that a former Nazi
This
received tribute
MP
from the
seems
House
to
of
be getting
Commons.
back to the
But it's
core issue here,
impossible
whether or
that
not
people
Trudeau
at
is
the
going to take
Privy
personal
Council, the
responsibility. He is
that
obfuscating,
people at the
again, Trudeau is
RCMP, people at Global
obfuscating
Affairs, and
as best
others did
he
not
can,
manage to vet
avoiding the
guests,
issue. And once again,
especially
saying it's all
the
about
people
supporting
invited by the
Ukraine.
Speaker. So will the Prime
What the
Minister
hell does that
personally
have to do
apologize to
with bringing
Canadians
a
and the
Nazi
international
into the
community
House of
who are
Commons?
shocked by what happened?
That
The
is
Right
exactly
Honourable
how
Prime
this
Minister.
man's mind works, though, or how it doesn't work.
Mr. Speaker,
But
Conservative
it
members know very
also
well that the
speaks
independence of the
volumes
Speaker of the
today
House is
from
very
all
important in our
corners of the
parliamentary
House
system.
that there is war fever in
And the
Ottawa.
government
There's
of the
war
day
fever from
does not
politicians
have
in
the
Ottawa,
right
and it's
to
almost
consider
unanimous.
or
They
veto
want this war to
the
continue,
guests chosen by other
even though
parties or even the
it's
Speaker
not
of the
going to
House.
turn out the way they want to. No way on earth it's going to turn
It
out
is
that
very
way.
important that
It's
we
going
continue to
to end with
unequivocally
a Russian
stand for
victory,
Ukraine,
and it's very close to that.
that
And
we
all of
continue to
this
strongly
BS about
defend
supporting
the
Ukraine for as
international
long as
rule
it
of
takes
law. We
is
will
just
always
that
stand with
BS.
Ukrainians
There's
against
no
Russians.
substance to it, and this will all change
The honourable
next
member
week, next month,
for
when reality sinks in.
Charlebourg-Saint-Charles.
Unless, of course, we have a nuclear
Well,
war
what I
before
would
that,
say
which is
is
exactly
that
what
since
Trudeau,
2015, the
U.S.
regulations
President
state
Biden,
that the RCMP
and
is
others
responsible for the
are
operations of the Parliamentary
trying to
Protective Service,
achieve.
which was put in
Maybe not
place at that
wittingly,
time after the
but
attack
they're
in
doing
2014.
the next best thing.
This House needs
So
to
it's
be
not a happy
protected.
time
The
in
PPS
Canada
does its
on the
work
foreign
supervised by the
affairs front.
RCMP. So when
We
a
are
guest like
all
the President of Ukraine
marching
comes to
in
Canada,
lockstep
it's
towards
only
World War
appropriate that
III.
the government and the Prime
And we are
Minister
all marching
supervise
in
the
lockstep
services
towards
to protect
continually
our
funding
guests.
this
Will
war.
the Prime Minister personally
And
apologize
tell
to
you,
Canadians?
it's not going to do anybody any good. Ukraine has very few men
The Right
left
Honourable
of
Prime Minister,
military age to fight.
Mr. Speaker,
This is
we
what
all
you'll never
recognize
hear
that
from
it
the
was a
likes of
serious
Justin
error on the
Trudeau,
part of the
who
former
just
Speaker of the House.
repeats,
And
talking
while
points
we are
and
considering who will be the
scripts
next
ad
Speaker of this
nauseum.
House, I
These
know
scripts
that
are
we
not
will
only
all want to
falsehoods,
know
they're
how we
meaningless.
will ensure that mistakes like this one will
So I'm
not
going to end it
happen
there for
again.
today. So we
The
did
government
not
will
get
always be there
anything about the
to work
cocaine in
with
the
opposition
aircraft.
parties
If
and the
those
Speaker's
reports are
office
correct or false,
in
questions were
order
not
to
raised.
do background checks for
We did
those who
not
visit the
ask.
House.
We
But
did not
it's
hear the
not
question
up
asked
to the government
about
to
why
violate
was there an emergency
the
cabinet
fundamental
meeting
rights of members.
early Wednesday morning.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly.
And once again, the
Mr.
Conservative
Speaker,
opposition is
in
not
2020, a
scoring
teacher was killed
points
in the south of
with
France,
as effectively as
and
they
it
could
took far
with
too
this
long for the
issue
Prime Minister to
because they're
call
making it
President
all
Macron.
about
Is the
hurting
same
the
thing going to
poor
happen again?
feelings
Or will
of
the Prime Minister call President
Zelensky,
Zelensky?
that
I will
clown
allow myself on
who
behalf of Quebecers, and
rides
I think I can
around
do this. I think
looking
I can
for
apologize on
more
behalf of
money to
Quebecers
fill his
to
sack
President Zelensky,
with.
offer our
And
cooperation,
that's all this really shows.
and I hope
Anyway,
that my message
I'm going
will
to say
be
goodbye for now.
transmitted
Thanks
to
for
President
watching. We'll
Zelensky
be
as of
back
today.
again tomorrow with
The
some
Right
more of
Honourable
this
Prime
because
Minister,
I think it's going to
Mr. Speaker,
continue. And we'll see where the Conservatives go
several
with
days
this.
ago, we sent
That
our
they are
apologies to President
definitely
Zelensky and the Ukrainian
not
people through
on
diplomatic
the mark.
channels.
They're
And we will
missing
continue to
a
work
vital
closely
opportunity here
with the
to
government of Ukraine
really hit that
to
sweet spot
defend
with a lot of
its
supporters who
territorial
say
integrity
enough
and
of this war, we
sovereignty
got to stop.
against
But they haven't
Russia's
got the
cruel
guts
invasion.
to make that decision. They haven't got the guts to go there. Not
and
yet.
the
But I think they
violations
will
of
eventually.
international
I hope so.
law
because
that
we need somebody
this
saying that. in the
invasion
House
of
of
Ukraine
Commons.
represents. We will
So
stand
we
with
stand on
Ukraine,
guard.
and
I'm
that is my
David Krayden.
message to President
We'll
Zelensky.
see you again soon.
And it is
Keep
the one that
watching.
I send him
Keep supporting
regularly
this
when we
broadcast.
speak.
Keep
The
ringing the
honourable
bell.
member for Belleuil-Chambly.
And please keep financially supporting me.
Mr.
Thank you
Speaker,
for those
I
of you
feel
who
deep
already
shame
do. Because
thinking
believe
about the
me,
Jewish community
I'm not making any friends in the
and how they
Conservative
have been
Party
harmed,
today.
both in Quebec and Canada.
I have it
Once
all
again, I
week.
would like to apologize.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.